Welcome Behind the Play, a video and podcast product of The Hoop Show that explores the lives of Geelong players past and present, as well as the off-field figures that are keeping us Geelong strong, as well as cool folks that are doing just awesome things all over this industry. Cardi, you're one such person. How's things, mate?
Things been good. Good to get on The Hoop Show for the first time. Seen your work with the other podcasts and other guests you get on and stuff. And I get around it. So good to get on for a chat today.
Yeah, it'll be good to pick your brain. As we were kind of saying just before we hit record, and I guess that peek behind the curtain for everyone watching and listening, we are still recording this in a weird vacuum where this could very well go live after the season's kind of kicked off, but we're still pre-season mode at the moment. In fact, we're still a few weeks off. We haven't even had the practice matches yet, so it's a strange old time where we know nothing, and we can kind of speculate and things can remain pure and everyone's starting on the same level and all that sort of stuff. There's no best, there's no worst. It's a strange old spot. So how are you feeling about, I know you do a great job covering a whole range of different teams, the entire competition, but at heart, you've got a love. How are you feeling going into this particular season?
With my club or just in general?
Yeah, let's focus on the Saints first and we can go from there.
Well, yeah, interesting on the Saints. A lot of people think that the Saints could be dropping from all the final sides, at least from last year. A lot of people have that opinion, but I've seen the work behind the scenes with a few of our players just in the preseason and all that, getting fitter and stronger. And a couple of our additions I thought were pretty smart in the trade period and the draft. I think the Saints really should be finals contenders again this year. I've got us right now, maybe 7th to 8th. We could easily fall outside, honestly. And I originally had that mindset at the start of the year, honestly. But yeah, I guess I just got to wait, see how we fare in the next two games for the practice matches. I know it's not everything, but you get a rough idea of how sides will sort of, play their footy in the lead up. So we got Essendon North. Hopefully, they go pretty well.
It's an interesting one. I know people can be pretty keen to try and dismiss preseason form. And I think that's, because I'm thinking back in like the days of, NAB Cup, Wizard Cup, all those sort of things. I think there was that time where Carlton maybe won the NAB Cup that year and came dead last by an absolute mile in the season proper. Yeah. And but I think all the clubs really, for the most part, are putting a bit more stock in that competition, not because they're trying to win something or anything like that, but they are really trying to execute those game plans and make it transfer to your starting 22 and those who might be right on the fringe. They want to make sure everyone gets proper game time. Sure, there might be that little bit of junk time and get a few of the games that are kind of 6 quarters long these days just to kind of rotate players through. But you can really see what they're going for. And so to your point, it gives you a good sense of the game plan. It gives you something to work with in terms of analysing whether it's going to actually stack up in the new season. And the Saints, I think probably along with the Cats, really, it's quite an interesting season for both clubs because there's a fair sized group that you could throw a blanket all over that could make a very strong argument for being in that kind of 5th to 8th sort of bracket, but some of them are going to ultimately have to miss. And so that's where maybe injuries come into it, the bounce of the ball, a bit of rough luck, whatever it happens to be. Who knows? Both of our teams could be sitting outside of the 8 at the end of the season, yet both be feeling like we were probably unlucky or something like that. It's a weird one.
Yeah, for sure.
It really shows what the AFL's been doing with the equalisation in recent years, because now it's just so tight across the board.
Yeah, it's been tight the last few seasons, hasn't it? Like every lead up as well. Because I know I've seen back in like some of the stats from previous years, just sort of the ladder positions some years, like even 2012, 2013, and the gap between the best and worst sides, much wider than what we've seen in the last 5 years, which it's good for the competition for sure, makes things more exciting.
Yeah, it certainly feels like, probably outside of what we've seen in recent years with, say, I'm sorry to kick them all there down, but, like West Coast or North Melbourne or someone like that, where they've kind of been cellar dwellers for a little while now. It really does feel like almost any other team on their day, if you're off by 1%, you're vulnerable. And that doesn't matter whether you're Pies or anyone further down the ladder. It's that fickle that, if you're just slightly off, you could blow it. Especially if the other team kind of comes in and everything's kind of working for them. They remain injury free, few good plays early in the game, and suddenly that their tail's up and you got yourself a real fight. So it's awesome for the competition. It's kind of stressful for a supporter, I guess, but it's great for the competition. So hopefully we're in for another season like that where any given Sunday any team can win. It'd be pretty cool. So from here, I guess there's a lot that we can kind of go through when it comes to all things that you do in the footy realm, and we'll get to all that shortly. But I guess for you, where did the love of the footy, and eventually the Saints as well, but where did that all first begin for you? Was it always present in your life? Was there a family member or a friend that was kind of showing you the ropes really early days? How did you kind of come to fall in love with AFL footy in the first place?
Well, I don't remember the moment I fell in love with it. It would have been, as soon as I was born and all that. I got brought up in a bit of a footy family. My dad was a big Saints fan, so he'd been going to the games ever since he was little as well. So obviously, I was always going to be a St Kilda supporter since he was really the only footy fan in the family. I mean, my mum, she's from Mexico, so she was never really obviously had footy in her life.
Yep.
She's obviously, been converted as well, but not obviously as passionate as I am and he is. But yeah, since I've just been loving footy, watching the Saints play it. I think I've been a member for probably like 19, 20 years now. So pretty much yeah. So I've been going to the games for the most part since when I was 1 or 2. I remember, when we were pretty good in like 08, 09, 10, I was at pretty much every home game. So I've been a passionate Saints fan for pretty much all my life.
And so I guess you kind of touch on a spot there, and I hesitate to do it as a Geelong supporter, but of course you mentioned kind of 08, 9, 10,
True.
that sort of window, and obviously a bit of heartbreak along the way. We won't spend too much time with it because I'm not looking to inflict this upon anyone. But I guess, what do you remember from that period at the age that you were and the level of experience you'd had with the game? I guess, what did you make of it at the time?
I probably did take it for granted at the time that we were like a powerhouse side at the time because, nowadays, and at least for after 2011, 12, when we couldn't make finals for 8 years after that, that was sort of when I started to finally take it in, going, geez, I should have appreciated the fact they were so good at the time because I hadn't seen us make a final series. I went 2011, but since then, last year was the first St Kilda final series game I attended. So yeah, definitely would have been good to have more success throughout my latter years growing up. But regardless, though, I still sort of enjoyed it when I was there, and I still sort of knew how important like a grand final was to make and all that, even being 5 or 6. I went to the 09 one and the replay. So yeah, like it was good to watch us win every week for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess perspectives of St Kilda supporters will differ, but obviously very, very unlucky to lose out in those grand final appearance years. But what can't be questioned in the slightest is, of course, just the immense quality of that team. Obviously, Geelong supporter very happy with how 2009 ended, but also recognise that we were very lucky. There was a lot of things that kind of worked for us. I think what we saw earlier in the season, that game between Geelong and St Kilda at Etihad or Marvel or the Dome or whatever we were calling it back at the time, is arguably one of the best games of all time. What was put on between both teams that day, but also kind of showed the incredible strength of that St Kilda list at the time. And I think a team of that quality can only be unlucky to not win a premiership. I guess it doesn't necessarily, like I said, doesn't necessarily make it any easier sometimes, I'm sure. But to your point, that was an incredible list and some wonderful players on it. And I guess, was there anyone as a supporter at the time, anyone in particular that you were really idolizing? I know there's obviously the likes of Lenny and Rue and kind of the names that obviously spring to mind for lots of St Kilda fans, and I think even a lot of neutrals as well that would look on quite impressed at what the Saints were able to do. Who for you was kind of the player that caught your interest the most when you were growing up?
I'm not sure actually why this is the player. He was one of our better players at the time, but I remember Nick Dalsano. From 2006 at least to 2010, I'd have him as my number on the back, and for some reason he was my favorite player. Just, I guess, loved his skills and the way he went about it. I guess later on when we weren't as good, I'd say more Lenny Hayes, Nick Riewoldt. I'd say of the whole lot, probably Nick Riewoldt, to be honest with you.
That's fair.
He's who I've been watching for the most part as I've grew up watching St Kilda, because he's been there at the club for the first 14 years of my life pretty much. So I'd say him mostly, but when I was sort of, a younger period, I'd say Nick Dalsano.
That makes sense. And I mean, it just touching on Rue. I mean, today's again a bit of a peek behind the curtain for people. Today's Super Bowl day, and it was a bit weird seeing Rue popping up on some of the coverage over the course of the day. Obviously,
it was, wasn't
it? Bit of living in the US these days, and brought his I guess unique brand of perspective on the NFL to the mix. But it was kind of good seeing him back on screens again and talk talking so passionately about sport. Full stop. The guy's he just loves sport, regardless of whether it's the one he played at the top level or not. You can hear that passion every time he speaks, and you can only imagine what it would have been like to play alongside him. And I can only imagine what it would have been like to be a supporter of him and what the club was doing, because he's such an incredible leader.
100%.
Now, we kind of touched on those early days and some and I guess a bit of a lack of success there. But as you look at the Saints these days, and this list is building, and there's a new breed of player coming through, and some incredibly talented players on that list. How are you feeling about all things St Kilda at the moment? The direction that they're going, from leadership to just the chops of the players on the list. How are things tracking in your eyes? And what's maybe missing, if anything, still too?
Yeah, well, it's an exciting period, I feel like, now for the club, because I don't think we've had a genuine quality crop of youngsters, in the club that we've actually developed for a while, honestly, because we've always had it wrong in the draft and all that. We could have picked up Bontempelli, I think, Petrarca over 2013-14. We just got it wrong with so many draft picks, and we've never really had it going our way. We've tried to trade in players, and it never really worked out. And I remember 2019 trade period, we got in Butler, all those players. So we finally started getting things going then. But I'm looking forward to the future. I mean, Mitch Owens, people think he's going to maybe be an All-Australian chance this year. He's looking really strong. He was, honestly, some moments last year, the reason why we're still in games. Caminiti looking good. Nasaya, they're all actually quality players who I can see, being part of a premiership list in maybe 5 years' time if we make it.
What, I guess, the other half of that question is kind of what's maybe missing, I guess, in your eyes. And it's a bit hard for us to kind of cast an eye over things at the moment because we haven't seen them in the fullness of the season yet. But I guess how do you see that list? Is there anything, particular portion of the ground that needs a little bit of extra TLC, or just the game plan structured in such a way to kind of protect that portion a little bit? I guess what's still required of that list going forward to maybe be that Collingwood, Geelong of recent years, that team that goes on to win the premiership?
Yeah, I still think there are definitely list gaps at the moment. We're not where we can be. I think in the midfield as well, we can be exposed. We were against Hawthorn. We just seemed quite slow. We weren't quick out the blocks. So players like Seb Ross, they're getting a little bit old. So we need to get more youths and more, I feel like, power mids in our side, to be honest with you, because we don't really have the depth. And if players like Steele don't, perform that,
they don't quite fire,
expect to the quality that they are able to, because I feel like he's dropped off a little bit. We need him to get back to his All-Australian form. So maybe another midfielder or two. I'm not too sure if we'd be able to pick up, because I know we were looking at it to Goey. That could have been a perfect player to fill in the role, but that didn't end up happening. I think up forward as well, maybe, I don't know, maybe another smallish for like a Bailey Fritsch type would be really handy to score like a 30 plus.
That third
goal.
tall, yeah,
a third tall, because we've got Memory and King, obviously. Caminiti still young, but we haven't really had a full season, at least not last year, with them both firing. So up forward, we can be a bit on the lower end in terms of scoring. So, but definitely midfield, I think that's the main thing that we need to target over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I certainly think, to your point about Jack Steele, yes, I think his form's been down, but I don't know if that's all his fault or necessarily even form per se, but more that because there's been maybe some deficiencies or some missing links within that midfield, that it means he's attracted all of the attention. And you can be the best player in the comp, but eventually that kind of wears you down or breaks you down, or there's just too many people for you to have to try and overcome, that your impact diminishes. So hopefully for his and the Saints' sake, I mean, in the short term, obviously, because there's no more trading in at the moment, that someone from within really builds and kind of takes on that role, that allows him to kind of play a little bit more freely. But in time, whether it's someone that you draft or trade in, that you get this kind of almost rock star style player that can allow Steele to really play to his greatest capacity as well. Because I think there's no club in the competition that would say no to him if the opportunity ever emerged. You guys have obviously very fortunately got him, and hopefully he can just get the support to really be performing at his best week in, week out. And we've seen it, and we know what he's capable of. And yeah, I don't think that skill set is diminished in any way. It's just that he's kind of getting squashed. His impact's being squashed a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I guess stepping away from the game itself, we'll get back to that a little bit shortly. You know, as the ticker across the bottom has been kind of talking about, Cardman22, that's a profile that you've built online. You've built yourself a nice community and platform across multiple different social media platforms as well as YouTube up to today. How did the idea to kind of pursue content creation around footy actually begin for you?
Well, I started making content on the channel itself, I'd say almost 7 years ago, 2017. I was into footy cards, still am now, but just, opening cards on a camera, just putting out to an audience, just for the fun of it, realistically. Had no aspirations of taking it to where it is now or anything like that, or expanding even past footy cards or anything like that. And over time, I thought I'd, gradually make a bit of a shift. I think I started posting, I did a goal kicking challenge, did a couple of the vlogs that you see nowadays.
Yep.
A couple of highlights packages, just, tier makers, a few. I just started over time just evolving from one piece of content, which you can't really get very far, to more AFL, which there's much more of an audience appeal for. And over time, just growing from there, and up in the quality of the videos and all that, and, taking the ideas to a next level, I guess you could say, for sure.
At what point did you start to come to realize that maybe there was actually a possibility of building like a proper platform there? Because, to your point, dealing with footy cards and those sort of things is obviously, a bit of fun at first. And I've done the scroll and I've gone and checked it out. And the very first video there to this day, 6,500 views. And that's your oldest piece of content now at this point. And there's been so much growth since. But I guess, was there a point for you gone, well, shit, hang on, there's actually a possibility that this could become something? It's, what you had back then is a far cry to where you're at now, and 30,000+ subscriptions, and content coming out regularly, far more diverse in terms of what you're putting out there. Analysis of the game, analysis of different teams. You've got your blogs. You've got so many different ways you can kind of interact with the audience. But when did you first realize, well, this could actually be something for me?
I'd say maybe the period where I hit 1,000 subscribers. Soon after, I started making a bit of money from the channel, and I didn't realize you could actually do that, or like knew how to do that or anything like that. So when that started, it gave me much more motivation to continue making more content at a higher level. And then when I upped my quality, I got a camera, I got lights, all that over time, new laptop, and the audience grew. I'm like, this is what because during the period like year 11, 12, I didn't know what I wanted to do past school and all that. But now that I've got sort of a purpose, I feel like something that I actually want to do, this is sort of what I'm enjoying. This, I feel like I could take into a career, or at least at the moment, making enough to, continue doing what I want to do.
Yeah, I mean, like the cool opportunities that come about help a little bit as well. You're building your own platform, but then, like, we met at the AFL 23 launch event. It wasn't quite a launch event in the end last year because the game got delayed afterwards, and then
it was
probably the less we say about the game after that, the better, I would say, at this point. But Ross, don't come after me. It's I mean, these sorts of opportunities are amazing as well. We see these events, and you see Christian Petrarca walking around as a cover athlete, and there's all sorts of people across all different aspects of the footy realm, from players to traditional media, influencers, podcasters, etc. What's it like when you get to go to opportunities like that? Because again, this is not something you would have ever possibly imagined in that point you were talking about a moment ago, where you're not really sure what you want to do with your life. Not necessarily an unusual thing also for someone who's through school or even just in those early stages post school. But all of a sudden, I guess, how would younger Cardi, looking at today, think about all this?
Oh yeah, freaking hell! Like back when I started, because I don't even think I would have expected to still be doing anything at this point. I would have probably imagined it to be at some point stopping. But yeah, taking what I started with to, going to events with Christian Petrarca, doing that goal kicking challenge thing with Cripps and Mitchell, like opportunities like that, they're not easy to come by. So yeah, look, if I would have known that at the time, for sure, maybe I would have, put a little bit more effort into it at the start. But yeah, definitely something I wouldn't have imagined ever getting to, for sure.
And talk to me about the challenge of, and we were kind of referencing this a little bit before we started recording, the multi different ways that you can reach out to people, let alone the challenge of the window that we're currently in, again, recording in a vacuum of the pre-season, the period, trying to keep people engaged in your content with you across multiple different platforms. You are working multiple different platforms. What are some of the challenges you found around that over the course of the last, well, I guess over the last few years, but you kind of refine that craft right up until more recent day, and I guess where we currently exist in a period pre-season?
Yeah, it's a challenge over the off season, finding fresh ideas to keep the channel relevant, because the growth at least isn't there. At least I haven't seen it. I was obviously, well, not obviously, but I was overseas
Yeah, you're in the
January.
US, right?
So yeah, Mexico. So I didn't really know exactly how to keep the channel running at the time. So I filmed a few like vlogs, because I've had a series on my channel which have nothing to do with the AFL. It's more just for the people that like what I do and all that, who like to see what I do behind the scenes. A weekly vlog series. So I thought I'd sort of make that and sort of switch it up a little bit by doing a travel series. So that's sort of how I kept the content up, but it didn't really help with growth necessarily. Over the last couple of weeks, I've started getting back into the groove of things with a few videos that I like. Over the off season, I like to take a little bit more time with the videos, because I've got more time to spend and I don't have to worry about a certain schedule with like the tips and the vlogs and all that. I've got more time to just think of ideas, or sometimes plan on what I want to do for the next season. I've got more time up my sleeve.
Well, that's one of the hardest parts, right, during the season itself, is actually that planning and kind of, because so much of what a lot of footy content creators are doing, and this is the same for pretty much anyone who creates content around sport or any form of entertainment, is it's always about the now. People are wanting to know what's happening now, whether it's injury news, whether it's a match report, whether it's, addressing some news that's kind of broken. It's all about that in the moment stuff and being able to respond to that. But what you're getting to talk about there is, these more carefully curated pieces, really, really considered and thoughtful sort of stuff, and things that you're more passionate about as well. It is one of the great opportunities in the preseason, postseason period, where you can kind of explore this stuff a little bit more, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it allows you to kind of scratch some itches that maybe have been sitting there this entire, 12-month period, or, between seasons.
Yeah. And sometimes over the off season, there are some videos that are relevant to talk about. For example, when the fixture drops in December, that everyone gets like on top of that. I remember a couple of years ago, or maybe 2 or 3 years ago, as soon as the fixture dropped, there were like 9 videos in like the space of an hour, because everyone was just getting on top of a piece of content that
Those
was
hot
relevant
reactions
at the time, that would actually get decent views. I remember I was like, because most of the time I don't mind about taking a couple of days to get the video out, but for those videos, I'm like, quickly record, edit as little as I possibly can, and get it out. So I think I was first to release that video out back in the day, which helped with getting as many eyes on the channel as possible and getting a bit more growth.
And to be fair, there's something to be said, like, I talk about these kind of carefully curated and planned out pieces, but there is something to be said for the kind of the rawness sometimes, and you've kind of highlighted that pretty well, like that kind of initial reaction, that guttural sort of feeling that you get when you look at the fixture and you realize that maybe you've been dealt a shitty hand, or maybe it's an awesome one, and you start kind of plotting out what you think the season might entail for your club or for yourself, in terms of maybe traveling to different games, all those sorts of things. I think there's something to be said for that too, especially when you've kind of built your own community and people kind of, it's not just about your take on the Saints or your take on this or your take on that, but it's actually more about you. People are kind of tuning in for you and what you think, as opposed to just the news itself.
Mm-hmm.
People really start to invest then in the way that you react to these things. It becomes more about the person, which is really, really cool. It's something I've really enjoyed through all the video game stuff I've been doing for, I don't know, 10 years or whatever now. And I've kind of been starting to enjoy through the footy lens as well in more recent years, since I kind of joined up with Ben and a part of the Hoop Show. It's a cool thing. And I guess what is it like when you kind of have these moments, you record these sorts of pieces and you just put them out there, as you say, kind of far less edited than usual? Do you worry that, oh, hang on, maybe I've not given that enough, not given it enough love? Maybe I've rushed it too much?
Sometimes, but I don't normally put out those sort of videos anyways. And most of them, at least as a lay, I really do carefully put it out and ensure that the quality doesn't really change or anything like that.
Yep.
And people don't really mind. Like they understand with those sort of bits of content that it's more about the raw content. But I don't post that sort of stuff very regularly. And normally with that sort of stuff, they come through the form of the live streams where people can talk to me in real time, and that's what I love, because I've actually started to build a good community and audience of people that know me and watch me for myself, sometimes over the actual footy and all that sort of stuff, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got so many different platforms that you can kind of touch base with your community, from obviously the YouTube channel, which is probably the core thing that I'd imagine most people know you for. But there is, you're on Instagram, you're on Discord, even you've got your store live streams, you've got a whole range of different things that you're doing, and it's one of the coolest things is being able to interact with people at like where they are. But at the same time, it can also create a lot of work. So how do you go try to spin those plates, but also take some time to look after yourself, etc.?
In terms of just like engaging with people, or like the audience?
Well, yeah, there's that engagement part of it. And again, it's, there's so many different places that people are, and that, they're maybe hungry for your thoughts or content or whatever it is, but being able to look after yourself as well and just get that time to rest, to sleep, to put your feet up, to socialize, whatever it is that you might need on any given day.
Yeah.
Because there is so many people out there looking for your thoughts and your takes on these things. How do you sometimes draw the line and go, no, I need to do this. I need to look after myself. And I know you said you don't necessarily rush to put the content out there, and that maybe helps a bit. But
sometimes it's a bit difficult. Like when I've got, even on a live stream, I want to end a stream. I need to get sleep for the next day, but I see so many people who want me to continue that kind of made the influence for me to keep going for longer, or like Instagram DMs. Hard to say no. Hard to not go through them all and try and reply, because I feel bad sometimes not replying to everyone. Even with a Discord, like so much is said in that server that I've almost like left it to the mods to deal with. Because obviously I've got my own, life as well behind outside of YouTube that I got to worry about as well.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's difficult, but over time you get better at just balancing it.
Yeah, it's certainly one of the great challenges I think anyone who kind of creates content will face, but it seems like you're handling it all pretty well for the most part anyway. So
for the most part, yeah.
Hopefully that continues for you going forward. We'll cycle back to the game itself in a moment. Going forward, we've kind of spoken about these ideas and things that you might explore a little bit in the off season. Is there a particular piece of content that you just kind of really desperate to make? There's that dream idea that you just somehow want to realize. Because we see lots of people doing really cool things in this space. Again, some of these things can take a long, long time to actually put together, though. For you, is there something out there, kind of that unicorn that you want to chase, that there's something you really want to do in this space?
I definitely want to take it to the next level with the video ideas and be more like, have more sort of piece of content that have more of a chance of going viral. I had an idea to go to every single game in a round that wasn't gather round. I think round 2, so like literally flying in and out, going to a Melbourne game for 1 minute and then literally flying to like Sydney for the next night or whatever. But I don't think that's possible, because I actually had a good look for like a couple of hours at all the flight times. I don't think that's possible, and it's really difficult to even fund if that were to be the case. But
yeah, it would be a pretty expensive thing, I reckon.
Yeah, it's something that you need it to literally be spot on and perfect, and maybe get a sponsor for sure to make the money back for a piece of content like that. But more, I'd love to get involved with any work with the AFL. That'd be pretty cool. That's something that I sort of wished for last year that didn't end up eventuating. So maybe this year would be kind of cool to do something with them, because that gives you more opportunities.
Absolutely.
To do other stuff, 100%.
I mean, we're seeing the AFL itself kind of lean into that content creation and the content creators more in recent years. I think, many would say that for the longest time, the AFL was one of the slowest codes around the world, really, to kind of embrace what kind of a really committed community can bring. But we're starting to see it in recent years. Cade obviously popping up on the AFL platforms a fair bit over the course of last year, and I think there's only going to be more in the months and years to come. And so it'd be awesome to see you doing your stuff, either with the AFL, maybe some stuff even with the Saints. I guess, is there any sort of dream of being maybe more tightly involved with the Saints itself, or would you always like to be a bit of a generalist?
Yeah, it's a good question actually. Obviously, even whilst being a generalist, I still do as much as I want to do with the Saints, like going to the games and all that sort of stuff. So probably for the sake of at least my content, it's better to be more broad and have more of an audience, like a range of audience that I can appeal to. But still, though, doing stuff for the Saints would be pretty cool, which could happen this year as well. Reaching out to them, and even just if I had the opportunity to go to the rooms after a game or two, for the videos or an interview with the player here and there would be pretty cool as well.
Yeah, that sort of stuff would be amazing. And obviously, probably huge for the growth of the channel as well. When people, realize that access is something you've got, it's a hard nut to crack, that one. And so to be able to get in there would be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Well, as we cycle back to the game a little bit and start to kind of close things down, we've touched on 2024 for the Saints a little bit already. And I guess being a Geelong show, I do want to kind of cross things over there a little bit. Now, I don't want to focus on that 09 grand final anymore for you. I don't want to dredge that up any further. But do you have any particular memories of clashes between Cats and Saints? Obviously, I kind of referenced a classic earlier in that season. But are there any other memories of yours that really stick out when it comes to those two specific teams?
Yeah, there are a few. I'll talk quickly about that game, actually. I remember I wasn't at the game.
Me either, unfortunately.
I think I had a birthday to attend, and I was really devastated about that. I'm like, nah, screw this, because I knew the stakes for 14-0 both sides, or whatever, 13-0, undefeated clash, highest ever crowd at the Dockland. So I watched it, I think at my grandparents' place, and oh mate, how good that was at the end of the game. I know you wouldn't have been happy about it, but I was like recreating Gardener's Mark at home and all that sort of stuff. So that was pretty good. Then obviously the grand final, I went to that. I remember booting the seat in front of me after Chapman's goal on because it was mainly St Kilda fans on the train ride home, obviously, because the Cats fans stayed to watch the celebrations. It was literally,
or they'd head the other direction,
or that as well. But it was dead silence on the train, like you could hear a pin drop really. And then on it, like the rivalry sort of, obviously 2010, the qualifying final was a big one as well. But the rivalry there was not much of a rivalry after that, to be honest. I do remember the game where we beat the Cats, where they were, I think, top of the ladder when Gresham kicked that goal at Marble.
Oh yeah, I recall that one.
That was a game where I think at the time we were a chance to make finals, but obviously didn't end up making it. And obviously last year's game as well, where we sort of had to win to make finals, was a big one, because I was there with a few Cat supporters who I've started to become mates with through the YouTube community, which is another good thing about building up an audience. So good to get the bragging rights over them and knocking the Cats out of finals as well. I think that was the game that they needed to win for finals also. So after the Cats having years and years and years in the finals, it was good to see them missing out and actually making it ourselves, because the Cats, I'm not going to lie, I've never been fond of them. They've always been pretty low on my list of teams.
Look, I guess we've kind of inflicted a little bit of trauma from a very early stage on you, so I kind of get that a little bit. But it is also, I guess, to that point, it is a sentiment that I've seen kind of grow a little bit in recent years. I really, like, for the longest time, and I'm talking about like pre-2007 here, Geelong felt like one of those teams that people would kind of feel a little bit sorry for, the drought and all those sorts of things. And then all of a sudden that broke, and it's okay. They've won one premiership in 50 years. That's, whatever, no big deal. Then it became 2, then it became 3, then it became which, I think most people are still kind of okay with. I'm sure they're probably getting over us, but mostly okay with. But then this period where, despite the fact we weren't winning premierships and people would obviously take the opportunity to, rib us up a little bit for that, we never fell off a cliff. And I think people started getting a little bit over the Cats. And so I've certainly noticed more recent years, and, whether they're YouTube comment sections, whether they're polls that you might see on Twitter or whatever the social media platform happens to be, and you see people kind of talking about their least favorite teams, and in a way that I've never seen before, I'm starting to see the Cats appearing more and more. I think people are well and truly over us. So whilst I wouldn't mind just seeing us continue to linger up the top there, there's a little bit that goes, oh, if we could maybe just fall off, have a quiet 5 years just to let people kind of appreciate us again, be kind of nice. It's a weird one. It's a good problem to have, but it's a weird one. And you kind of highlighted there with the Cats not necessarily being among your favourite teams.
Definitely a good problem to have. You'd rather have everyone feel envious of you over feeling sorry for you, because that was the case for Carlton for quite some time. I've never hated Carlton purely for the fact that they were never very good. So it's a good problem
you
to
just
have.
feel sorry for them, to your point. Yeah.
You feel sorry for them, but you don't want to be the club that people feel sorry for, and that's the Saints as well. Everyone, I know it's hard to be St Kilda fan because everyone in the arguments is always like one premiership. That's the only argument they ever dish out, isn't it? But yeah,
they'll throw that, and then yeah, you're right. It kind of becomes a feeling sorry for some of the bad luck or whatever whatever the case happens to be. Whether it's 09, whether it's the bounce of a ball, it's I get it as much as I I guess I can't relate. I do get what you mean, and hopefully for you and all Saints supporters, there's premiership success on the way. Certainly, as we touched on earlier in the show, the list is building in a way that looks pretty positive, and hopefully that does generate some success. Hopefully, you're not like beating my lot, and then I'll have to jump ship and support my own team at that point. But if the Cats aren't a feature, the Saints are a team that I would very happily see win a premiership nice and soon. I guess as we start to wind things down a little bit here, you've had the opportunity to see some of those clashes between the Cats and the Saints. We've touched on the Cats and what they've achieved over the years. For both teams, who's the greatest player that club has ever had? So for the Saints and for the Cats, who've you kind of judged, especially as an outsider when it comes to the Cats?
Is this just in my lifetime or in history?
I will leave you to kind of interpret however you want. But usually most people kind of think more within their time because you don't necessarily have the fullness of perspective.
Especially for Geelong, right? I mean, for history, I'd go senior, right? But again, maybe for the Cats, I'd go Gary Ablett Jr.
Yeah.
Even though he's been at the Suns for quite some time, I think still he was probably at his best at the Cats in his later end of the year, but you can make the argument for him being.
You can make the argument for the Suns as well.
Like, it's hard with that one, but I still think he was probably Geelong's best player that I've seen, and he'd be top 3 for sure of any player in my lifetime. For St Kilda, obviously mentioned Nick Riewoldt previously, probably the best player we've had in the last 30 years. I'd probably still stick with him, to be honest with you. Maybe at the moment, Jack Sinclair, he's starting to become a really well-liked player. And even hopefully Max King becomes that player as well and can win a couple commons.
It feels like Max is just so close.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, feels like he's kicking the door down, and one of these days he's going to have that. And maybe for all we know, it could be in a grand final. Maybe he has that Tom Hawkins in a 2011 grand final sort of moment where he just rips the game apart. And is a key part of a premiership. Fingers crossed for you as a Saints fan. You touched on both junior and senior there for a moment. Now, kind of casting you in a schoolyard pick style scenario here, and you got those two guys standing in front of you. You're building your own team. Who are you going to pick, Gary Ablett Jr. or Gary Ablett Senior?
You're asking the wrong person because I never saw any of Senior live. So, were you around for when Senior was playing at all, or not really?
Look, I was born in '89, so like I caught the tail. Like, I was really kind of conscious of the tail end.
Yeah, but you probably weren't.
But like I miss things like '89.
And at the time of you being young, you wouldn't have realized how good of a player he was until later.
Exactly.
On.
Yeah, you don't have that perspective. So
yeah. So
I know the stories. I've seen a lot of highlights. I saw a few games, but even then, kind of more to the back end of his career. So yeah, I don't have that greatest perspective yet either.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to actually make the argument. There's no right or wrong answer, honestly. Absolutely. I feel like maybe the level of competition back then wasn't as good as the level now, probably. Because of, obviously, it's become more of a career now than it was back then. So I'll probably go junior just because I've seen him play more and he probably been a bit more dominant in games. But as a goal kicker, obviously senior. Yeah,
no, that's fair.
Yeah.
From the Saints, and we'll hone in on the Saints down. We'll kind of pick apart some of the opposition a little bit here because it's not too long until we play against you guys at this point. Who, for us Cats fans who maybe are a little bit ignorant to all of the back end works of the Saints at the moment, who's a player that we should be keeping an eye on? Who's potentially going to have a big breakout 2024 in your eyes? That us as Cats fans should try and poach in a couple of years. We'll ignore the poaching part, but like who do you think's kind of there and ready to potentially explode for the Saints? this year?
I want to try and think outside of the obvious ones because everyone's been saying, Owens
Mitch
and
Owens and
even
stuff, yeah.
Filippo as well, is someone that I think still a bit too young yet for a breakout. It could be
Yeah, I
in
think he's pretty
2020.
green still.
It could be, but I don't think so yet. A Hunter Clark would be nice to see, but I just literally got a notification 30 minutes ago that he had a couple weeks on the sidelines. But I think he still could be fit for round one. So because when he's on, he's one of our
Face
best players.
fracture from the look of it.
Yeah, face fracture,
Yeah.
which is a little bit unfortunate. I'm pretty sure as well. He was almost going to go to North the year before, but I'm glad we kept him. He hasn't really had the greatest run of form with also injury. So he's a player I feel like who could possibly be one to look out for.
Yeah, that's fair. Certainly like tons and tons of talent. And to your point, and I guess, today's news as we record it kind of, I guess, highlights it. If he could just have a good run of injury, you just never know what this guy could be capable of. And obviously there's so many incredible players on that list as well. We've kind of touched on, Filippo as a more recent example. You've obviously had a fresh batch of draftees as well come through the club. We touched on, I mean, he's pretty well established now, but like Jack Sinclair, there's so many talented people there on the list, and it does feel like only a matter of time. I'd say it's touching wood that hopefully things work out and there's not too many injuries. It just feels like it's only a matter of time. I've got this feeling, and it's only I don't know what it is because I'll admit I don't get to study the Saints nearly in depth that I would say the Cats, for example. I just have this nagging feeling about Cooper Sharman that he's going to be really a really big player. There's just he shows flashes.
Do you see him more as a defender or a forward? Because he can be a bit of a
it feels forward. It feels like those throws into defense have only been to kind of help round his game more. But I could be kind of misreading that a little bit.
I like him more as a forward as well. I liked him he was such a random player in 2020 that just popped up and had such a positive back end of the year. I think he's a player as well up forward who I haven't mentioned. When you asked the question as well, because I haven't really been watching much of the Saints, I had to just think of someone that popped in my head. But Sharman's another good one as well. So hopefully he has a good run at it this year and could be that third tool for us if he plays up forward, or we could use a player down back. Because I'd say we've got one of the better defense in the league, but it could still be,
it could be better, right?
It could still be better. It
could always be better, which is a crazy thing. Now we've touched on favorite players of the current list, and we've mentioned the likes of Jack Steele. We've mentioned Sinclair. Who is kind of the player at the Saints that you just can't take your eye off? Who's your number one in your eyes these days?
It's a good one. When he's on, Max King, it's an easy answer. Like that game against Richmond in 2022 against Adelaide, he has the capability of changing a game around in a quarter. We've seen it a few times. So he's when he's on my favourite player, but sometimes he can be my least favourite. We've seen it against Brisbane. Completely
when he has an off day, he has off sometimes.
And I feel bad when everyone rips into him after it because it's not like he does it on purpose. He just has an off day kicking wise. So it's a mental game sometimes, and he sometimes has a few of the mental issues. But him, I'd say Max King for sure.
No, that's fair. And another key pillar, I guess, to all things Saints, but also the AFL more broadly is, of course, the kind of growth in the AFL women's game. I guess, what are you seeing of how that side of the game is trending at the moment? The Saints team, they finished ninth in this past seain. You could kind of feel that growth and that momentum coming there. Like they also feel like a team that may not be too far off, having a decent crack at a premiership in the women's game as well. How are you kind of seeing, I guess, the women's game more broadly as that continues to build?
Well, obviously, I don't know as much player-wise as I do with the men's, but I mean, I still watch the games, most of them, and go to them. I enjoy it. It's a good atmosphere and environment. I think, the Saints, we were pretty good this year. I think we started with a couple of losses, but never really seemed to be completely battered any of them, and competitive in quite a few. So hopefully next year we can make our first finals campaign. I'm not too sure. Has the trade period even begun or whatnot? Like, I'm not even sure the women's. I think it would have already ended, hasn't it?
Yeah. Trade and drafts are all done. So
right.
The lists are all kind of settled in their current form, and we'll wait and see what happens. But it's also an eternity away before they actually can get back out on the field again with the weird timing of everything. So
do you feel like the season should be a bit longer?
But also I think we really need to kind of think about where the season's positioned. I think the AFL rightly recognised that kind of having it completely out, like starting after the men's was done, was the wrong call. but I still feel like they could probably go earlier again. I guess the only question mark for them is around scheduling and those sorts of things in terms of getting the grounds right. But
Yeah,
I think the only way they can get the game to continue to grow is to invest in the game properly, and that might feel like a risk, but it's a risk that's worth taking. And I mean, I've said this to a few people I've spoken to over the show and various Hoop Show related pieces of content in the last couple of months. There was just some social media stuff that I noticed, and it was just drawing a comparison between the engagement when Geelong was knocked out of the finals in 2022 versus our very unfortunate and incorrect knocking out in the 2023 prelim. We'll ignore talking about the umpires any further there. And it was like the amount of engagement on the post, and it was kind of the wasn't our luck, we'll see you next season sort of thing. But it was like 5 or 6 times the level of engagement that there was on the post from 12 months prior, and you could just see the wheels starting to spin, and the quality of the game is continuing to improve as well.
Sure.
To your point, even about like kind of knowing the names of the players, I think like that's I guess for anyone who's really hardcore about the game, when it comes to the men's side, you're only learning 5 or 6 kind of new names every season because you've had years and years with the others, and there's always kind of a phasing in and out. Whereas for so many people now, and this is kind of a challenge even I'm facing with the women's side, it's like there's a good chunk that I really know now, but there's still some that look at the name doesn't quite come, and it's because I had to try and learn the entire list all at once. And that's, I guess, for both of our teams, they're both fairly fresh. So I think as that competition continues to establish and the names really start to rise, and I think about the Cats, and I think Georgie Pressbarkis, and that's a name that sticks out because her sisters I think it's just the best and fairest. I don't think they have an actual name for their Brownlow equivalent yet, do they? But it should be the Aaron Phillips Award before we know it, I'm sure.
I'd probably call it.
I think this is going to continue to build, and people are really going to invest, and the quality of the game is improving. It just feels like it's a snowball, and I just hope the AFL is willing to invest on a level that it needs to, because it could be huge.
I think so. More people that I know, at least, are getting more into the sport, and I guess it's probably good that it's on in its own time, because if it was on whilst the men's games were on, it'd be more difficult to actually follow it and have a proper interest in it, because everyone would just be more interested in the men's, and it'd be sort of undershadowed, and I don't think they'd want to be known as like the seconds in the league, like a pre-game match, ahead of a men's game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you're right. It is a weird one where like it feels like the right call is to kind of get them playing like in the same sort of portion of the year as the men's, but at the same time, you do worry that potentially they get overshadowed completely and they do get perceived as just kind of being the opening act, which you don't want either. It's a real headache, I think, for the AFL and all kind of other key parties. So hopefully they can kind of crack that nut soon, and the competition is better off for it. Well, Cardi, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show and to learn about, I guess, your journey into content creation, the love of the Saints, to talk about all these memories along the way. The season is not too far off at this point, and we'll be playing each other nice and soon. Thanks again so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, no worries. Great to get on. I think, is this the 50th episode? If I'm not mistaken.
I have no idea at this point.
I've been told that it's like a milestone. So
Ben has been
apparently
we've been recording the episodes and scheduling it. So if Ben, you're probably watching this now. If this is number 50, it was a good guest to have for number 50. Yeah,
real honor for sure. Because I've seen some of the other ones, and I'm not too sure if I should be deserving as the 50th. But yeah, good to get on and have a chat.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how he's got it all scheduled, because there's been a lot of recording in kind of the off season, and then we start scheduling things from there. But yeah, I mean, as I said, if this was episode number 50 in the end, it's been awesome, and it's been an absolute thrill to chat to you. If people do want to touch base, see what you're up to, check out all the content, where should people go?
Well, obviously YouTube is where I put out most of my stuff. TikTok as well. I'm starting to get more into that, so some different bits of content, some shorter form of people who are into that. And when I'm not, haven't got anything to film at, like a footy game for my main channel, I'd normally get a little bit of content on the TikTok. Discord as well. I've got a Discord server. I think there's still a really good community of people who are into footy and all that sort of stuff chatting. So that's something, if you're interested in, you can hop on that, and Instagram, as I said before, as well. And I do live streams every other week. So if you want to chat on the live streams as well, there's a place to do so.
Yeah, there's some amazing stuff out there. And as of when we record, we are 32 days away from our two teams playing against each other, 33 days away from our two teams playing each other. It's an exciting time. We are getting really, really close now. Good luck to the Saints for 2024. Good luck to you with all of your content endeavors over the course of the year. You've been nailing it in the last few years, and hopefully that continues to grow for you. Thanks so much for coming on the show, mate.
No worries, and likewise for you and your Cats.
And Cats fans, if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to the Hoop Show on YouTube, Behind the Play on podcast feeds. But otherwise, remain Geelong strong, and I'll see you next time.